You know, I had one experience when we was with Robbie at Nebworth, live at Nebworth. That was such a huge audience, you know. I'm sure other people have seen this, but Robert at that time had such a command over his audience. He really did. And it was a really good thing to see, real skill, actually. Despite criticisms of him and elsewhere, I think he's an amazing performer. And I remember that feeling of seeing a visual representation of how sound travels.
Right, yes.
And that was that he said, everybody raise your hands, and it starts at the front, and they all hear it. When they hear it, and the timeline is slightly delayed, and you see the hands go up in a wave form. And it's a physical representation of when people hear things. And it literally is like, it was such a beautiful thing to see, because the audience was at over 100,000 people, and very, very deep, you know, as opposed to wide. So you could really see the reactions to the things he was saying traveling through the audience. And then that energy of that many people focused on one thing, whether it's singing a lyric or, you know, when you've done those big gigs, you don't really get those from the smaller gigs. That's a different feeling. I prefer smaller gigs. But those big gigs give you, you know, all the hairs stand up on your body. You know, you really feel the power of the collective, you know, at that point. It's incredible. Yeah,
it's the expansiveness of it, isn't it? It's like, as opposed to like the fine details of a small show.
Yeah.
It's just the scale.
Yes.
It actually becomes abstract as well after a while. You know, you're like, it's like the sea of baked beans. But when you see that thing of... Yolanda Charles, welcome. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, nice. It's nice to see part of your brand new home as well after your epic move during lockdown.
Yeah, you can see my nice little screen anyway, hiding the sort of, you know, the clothes and things that you're not supposed to see.
Yeah, magic. So Yolanda, I mean, you've had and you still are having an amazing career which spans from, I don't know, Roddy Frame, Aztec Camera, Carlin Anderson, Squeeze, Paul Weller, Robbie Williams, and someone I've never heard of called Hans Zimmer, though I have heard he's done a few film soundtracks.
Apparently so,
Apparently so.
He's doing well.
He's doing all right for himself, young Hans.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're going to talk about loads of stuff about making music and experiences of it and what have you, but I want to take you back to the beginning. Okay, and take you way back. Why?
Oh
Why music?
Music was consumed as a joyful experience in my home as a kid growing up. My dad took a lot of pride in his sound system. He hailed from Grenada in the Caribbean and came over around that kind of Windrush time, but not specifically, you know, that boat, all of that. But he worked on the railway and he just absolutely loved partying, loved music. And so every day we could get away with, there would be music playing on his deck. And my mum had her area of love. Hers was Bob Marley, ska, and she loved Police and ABBA, of all things. Just a mixture of stuff. My dad was into King Cole, Sinatra, and his steel pan music as well, and he loved James Brown. Boy, did he love James Brown. And then I'm the youngest of four, so, you know, I've got three other siblings, and my elder two brothers were big music fans too.
Right.
So I got the Lovers Rock connection from my second oldest brother and the Soul Funk connection from my eldest brother, and it was just like I was immersed in love, you know, of music.
Amazing.
It made sense that I'd want to play an instrument, you know, basically.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. So when did you start playing? Were you like sort of teenage or younger than that?
It was just not inevitable because I was, you know, at my primary school we all learnt recorder from a young age, like about 7. And then people who liked it had the option to go into clarinet. which I opted for, and I had a naturally good ear, and I think it was because of the eclectic listening at home. I didn't really feel the whole classical music thing. We didn't listen to classical music unless it was played on steel pans. But I had no connection with any particular composers and things. So when we were learning that at school, I found it quite difficult. So that area helped me in terms of reading, but it didn't help me connect with the music. So I kept chopping and changing instruments all the time because I needed to have the feeling, and I did have the ear. But it took quite a while to find the instrument, and it wasn't until I got to secondary school and I started playing a bit of guitar. I was in steel pan orchestra at school as well, and that was just an ensemble experience, which was brilliant. And then I found the guitar, and then from the guitar I picked up bass lines on the guitar as opposed to learning guitar parts, because I needed to hear bass, so that's what I heard in the music. And my guitar teacher said, "Oh, you're definitely a bass player, aren't you? You're not hearing guitar chords." And I said, "I guess so." And it was, things like Bob Marley riffs and stuff like that I'd pick out on the guitar. And then I found a teacher that was going to help me with that. And at 15, I started playing the school bass, which was dusty in the back of a cupboard. And I went from there.
Wicked. So how did that sort of mutate or progress, I suppose? Because we don't really think about the things, we just fall in love with it, start playing, and then before you know it, this is what I'm doing for a living. But how did it start? Can you kind of see where it happened?
The pathway is very clear for me. I mean, I've tried different instruments until I found the one that really worked, and that was bass. So once I found it, that's what I did. And my mum very quickly agreed to let me buy one, which was, she was a care assistant and on very low income. And by that point, divorced as well. So she actually gave me a couple of £100 in an envelope to give to my guitar teacher, who then turned up 2 weeks later with a Guild B301. Wow. With a bright green scratch plate, man. It was so ugly. I was just like, oh my God. But I loved it. I loved it nonetheless. And I was just a bit of a dropout at school. I was in the music room most of the time. I didn't do great with my grades. I didn't pass many exams. I didn't sit many exams. I didn't turn up to many classes. Back then you could bunk off at will, right? Most musicians have a similar story. And I remember we got to 16 and we'd finished with all of that. And I knew that I had done so badly I wasn't going to go to any kind of A-levels or anything. And I remember specifically walking down the street and came across a guy called Luke, thank you Luke, who is this trombonist that I'd done one of the music courses with in my secondary school. And he said, "What are you going to do next?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "Have you thought about joining the youth club at the Sixth Form Centre?" And then they're doing a new course there, which is going to be a popular music course. And you don't need any qualifications to get in, and you're going to be good enough because you've got enough of the natural technique anyway and stuff. And they also give bass lessons. So I was just like, wow. Yes, please. And I had no clue this service even existed. So my school hadn't managed to inform me of anything useful, Of course, I learned to read and write. Thank you, school. And so, I went there, did well, first of all, I got my first set of bass lessons from an actual bass player, bass teacher, this guy called Lawrence Canty, who just, set me on my path in terms of correct technique. I didn't use my little finger. I wasn't plucking in exactly the right way. I had a sort of, hybrid kind of thing. So I didn't have any playing musicians around me. I only had musicians on records to emulate. And there wasn't a lot of stuff on telly back then to put a copy unless you really looked for it, which I didn't. So he helped me with that and gave me some theory lessons. And I learned, some of the modes quite young. So I was about 16 then. And then he asked me if I was going to do the music course, and he put my name forward, and I got on board with that. And then from there, the course was a fledgling course, and it wasn't a very good course in respect of understanding how to engage, like anything that's at the beginning. It's just a sort of prototype, if you like, of the DIMS and the Guildhall kind of popular music courses and things like that. So one of the good things they did was to put us in live music situations in competitions and things like that with other schools and courses. So we did one of those as a collective group of musicians. We weren't in a band, but we just got together for the course, the competition. And I got I didn't meet this person then, but he was a sound engineer on the desk at one of the shows. And he remembered me like 2 years later when he was being asked if he knew any female bass players when he was working with Jimmy Sommerville.
Right.
So I met him when I was 17, or he came across me when I was 17. And it was 2 years later that he then called up and said, I've put your name forward for Jimmy Sommerville. And that was my first professional session.
Wow.
And then from there, you know, it just starts to spiral because people then see you publicly, and then you get more invitations to do stuff. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, everyone I've spoken to, I mean, we know this, but a lot of the people who are going to be watching and listening on podcasts, they don't really see that the way you get asked to do things is generally a word of mouth thing, because someone's seen you do that, and then you get referred to that, and then the snowball thing. But before we kind of move on, what was it like the first session then? Because obviously you've gone from doing sort of the sort of bandy sort of competition sort of things, but not being in a band, to then, oh my God, I'm working with Jimmy Sommerville, who was then, and probably still is, a pop star.
It was really nerve-wracking. We were at Nomis Studios where we rehearsed there, and Nomis was I know you know Nomis well, as well, because it's now no longer a functioning studio in Shepherd's Bush. But that environment, you know, there's lots of famous faces around, very accessible, sitting in canteens together. So it had a number of intimidating moments in terms of meeting people, physically see people that I'd only ever seen on telly before. And also Jimmy, I'd known him from the Communards, you know, and the music was, you know, he'd had his hits and everything. So it was pretty intimidating. But but at that point, you know, I'd been playing for about 4 years by now. And when I got to secondary, to sixth form centre, and I did that course and everything, as soon as I was a bass player, any work that came away, and I say work, I mean, this is for a kid, any invitations to have a jam play, busk, whatever, I said yes to everything. I really did. And I put myself in some horrendously nerve-wracking situations. For instance, I did the Weekends Arts College in Kentish Town, and that was a beautiful, or still is, it's called Interchange Arts, I think now, or WAC, and it's now in Hampstead area. And that was an amazing opportunity because I got to play a lot of jazz fusion. I got to be in a class that was headed by Ian Carr, a trumpeter from a band called Nucleus. He's no longer with us, but he's incredibly well respected, his reputation and his knowledge of Miles Davis, etc. And I was doing well, but I wasn't as good as the actual, you know, top bass player in the college course. And this was a weekend thing, so I was doing that alongside. You know, this is what you do. You put yourself out there, you work hard. You don't just do the minimum, you do the maximum and then more, which is what I was doing. And I was also working in jobs. I worked in Safeways and, you know, when you could. At 15, I got my first job. So I was doing all of that, college, and I was doing weekend courses as well. And with Ian, he said, well, look, you're good enough to get into the advanced class, but our advanced bass player is great already. So we'll have two and you can just swap. So I had all these boys in this class. They're all 4 or 5 years older than me. And there I was waiting like an understudy for my moment, you know. And they took us to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival one year, which is amazing. And I got asked to play, you know, tunes like Goodbye Pork Pie Hat and Elegant People by Weather Report. And this is at the age of 17, 18. And I was afraid, but I never said no. So by the time the Jimmy Sommerville invitation came along, I was nervously excited because I knew it was a massive step up. I was going to get paid for one thing. It was just like, woo, money, this is great. But I'd already been putting myself in so many scary situations. I was kind of used to the fear, feeling it, getting used to the feeling of it, and not letting it stop me from doing anything, you know.
That's amazing. That's formative experiences then. So when the Jimmy thing comes along, it's like, okay, I know it's now gone up a level, but musically it hasn't gone up a level. It was possibly simpler. Really, but it was the context is scarier, but I can play it. And as well, you know, we were doing live TVs. There were quite a few shows like that around then, you know. And so, you know, I really had to, I don't know, it's kind of, you know, inappropriate to say man up, you know, but I really did have to just
just basically forget all of my fears, my worries. I couldn't allow them to be at the forefront of my considerations. Take the job, find out what the job is, prepare for the job, be as prepared as you possibly can be, and go out there and wait for the countdown and play. And then have a little shaky moment afterwards, but just stay on point in terms of your focus and your belief in yourself as well, to just get the job done. And, I was very young. I was 19 when I did that. So, I was in the band with the seasoned professionals, bunch of seasoned professionals. And we were doing a video for his single at the time, To Love Somebody, which is a cover by the Bee Gees, of the Bee Gees song. And I remember the people in the band were asking me, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 19. And they were just like, you're 19 and you're doing this at that age? And I was like, yeah. And they said, you know what, you've got a long career ahead of you.
Wicked.
And they said, this is the start of something for you, so just don't mess it up. And I really listened to them, because I was a bit casual at that point, and then I realised that actually it was a bit of an amazing opportunity, and I didn't waste it.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's really nice they gave you that support, because obviously you're in that situation and they're seasoned pros, so that's making you nervous. And they could have reacted the other way. It's like, who is this young upstart who's clearly really good? And they would then be jealous because, you're 19 and you're really good. But for them to actually say this is the start of something really good, so, that's awesome. So then what happened? So where did you go after Jimmy Sommerville then?
Well, I joined, like I said, I was saying yes to everything. I think at one point I was in 6 bands. There's a whole bunch. My timeline's a little bit confused at the moment, because I did so many bands. I can't quite remember in what order they all were, but there was just so many meetings up with people that had either seen me play in a small club somewhere that then asked me to do something else. There was a band I was trying to run with some of my friends. We were just doing fusion covers because nobody was going to pay us or come to see us play fusion, but we just did it anyway for the hell of it, and that was amazing. One of the guys that I met, who I can't quite remember how we actually met, but this guy Andrew Missingham, a drummer, he we ended up working in a band he was in called Is It, and through that band I did so many other bands, and through Andrew, who I then went on tour with him with a band called Urban Species. Andrew sent me a little message saying, I've just seen this advert in a Variety newspaper or something. Now, I would never get Variety. I'm not an actor, and I wasn't looking for parts or anything. But occasionally they would advertise, especially TV World would advertise in this paper. And he sent me this little clipping, and he just said, they're looking for female musicians again, which at the time I kind of felt a bit annoyed about, because I wanted to be perceived as just an equal to everybody. But I understood that at that time I just took it on the chin, because an opportunity is an opportunity. And they were looking for, musicians for all of the positions in a band. All we had to do was send in a cassette and a photographs and a CV, and they wouldn't say it wasn't said what show it was for. It was just that it was for a TV show, or anything more about it. So I sent it off, some dodgy cassette of me playing. I have no idea what I said. I know it was dodgy. Any appropriate recording materials. I think I did something with my mum's tape machine. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like at one point, I didn't even have an amp when I was young. Wow. I did it later on, but I used to put my bass, the body of my bass on a big table, and hear the bass notes resonating through that. You've done this, right? That's how you hear my actual sound, because I never had an amp until I was, a bit further along the line. So anyway, I sent them a cassette and then got an audition point, which I then became selected from. And that was for the Jonathan Ross TV series that he did called Saturday Zoo. And it was a one-off, and it was a little bit chaotic and a one-off. But despite it only being a one-off, and you could perceive that as a failure or something, it still, gave us the character Paul Calf, which was Steve Coogan's character. And then there was Loads of Money character, which was Harry Enfield. There was John Shuttleworth's character, which was, I forgot what his actual character, but the guy, I don't know if you remember all of that.
Yeah.
Younger people listening won't remember that, but they'll certainly remember, Steve Coogan. So yeah, it was a really exciting show, and they had guests on actually playing their own material with their band, and then they'd also have an artist without a band potentially.
Right, okay.
And then they'd use our house band. So I became part of this house band that ended up backing K.D. Lang, Suzanne Vega, even Ben Elton at one point did a song about making love in the movies or something. It was,
Oh, God.
it was like, yeah, mate, too much information, but hilarious, and with some really amazing things. And some of the guests we had on, we also backed Nisha Paris. And by now, I think I was 21. So in a short space of time, I was on national television every Saturday night for 13 weeks.
Wow.
Live.
Brilliant.
And that was really, really scary.
Yeah.
Live TV, as well as the fact that we had all these artists we had to back, learning the new material. There's no reading, it's memorizing everything, and there's no redos, It's just as a play, and that's what lives, Yeah. And Paul Weller was a guest on with the Paul Weller Movement, I think that would have been the band that he did after Style Council, but before his solo incarnation. And I think they did Weaver, I think to remember they did Weaver. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, I don't know how long it was after that, but not massively long, that Paul got hold of my number, or maybe his dad called me and said, "Do you want to come to Nomis to have a jam with me and Steve?" He said, "Yeah, it was Paul," which I was quite, excited about getting a call from Paul Weller, because he did actually do all of that kind of thing himself, calling up the musicians directly, as I'm sure you know. And they just said, "Come down." So obviously I was familiar with Nomis. I was, 6 years playing bass only, and really 2 years professional at this point. And I went along not knowing what was going to happen, and basically we just jammed over some bluesy stuff, me, Steve and Paul, in the studio in Nomis. And not long after that he called up and said, "Do you want to be in the band? I want to take something on the road. I've got a new album just finished with Marco." I was on bass for that, so it was already recorded, so I didn't get a chance to actually record that album. But that was the album that we promoted, and I joined that band that year. And I was really young, but when we were being reviewed, I remember reading a review, they were talking about Steve Craddock and me being part of this lineup, and they said, "Young Steve Craddock and session veteran Yolanda Charles." And I was like, session veteran? I was still a baby. I'd only been a professional for like 2 or 3 years, But I was already at that age being perceived as somebody who'd been around for a long time, but I hadn't. It was just all new. But I had this "I am a professional" persona, and I think that came across.
Yeah, that's awesome. What was obviously? I guess maybe it helped with Paul's music that he's into his funk and his soul music, and he likes to think he digs jazz in his own sort of way, but he is quite rock as well.
Yes.
So that was that like a different approach to music than what you'd done previously?
Very much so. I mean, Paul, the way I describe what I learned working with Paul is that he kicked my butt in a lot of ways. I came from a soul funky, cool background, and I think that in some elements, in some respects, some of the people that I was working with at that time didn't understand where soul and funk came from, which was actually blues. And that blues was a feeling music. So the music itself retained the feeling, but the physical attitude had adopted this kind of jazz-like mentality of specialist or superiority, or or too cool to like get down or sweat too much. Everything was a little bit, bass is a bit high. The bass player would kind of do that with his head, and that would be about all. You'd never see him like really physically moving and really losing their stuff, while they're playing. And I think that I arrived with this kind of carefully managed attitude. I had an active bass. It was a couple of notches too high, really, to be comfortable. It's good for slap, you see. When it's high, it's good for slap. But on Paul's gig, I didn't need slap. He was like, well, you got the bass up so high for. What do you think you are, Mark King? I was like, no. And he's like, I was, oh, God. So do you know what? I mean, he never directly said, do this, do that. But I felt that, you know, I just watched, because I was so young, I was taking in stuff everywhere. And I could see from Paul's movements with his guitar, how he was able to swing it around his body and stuff and be free. And, you know, if you've got the bass like up quite high, it really sort of is quite stiff. So by lowering it, my waist could move more. And that freed my shoulders used to be up too high. So as soon as I dropped the bass, I could feel that it's actually a better position for being more expressive physically. So that was something that he didn't directly tell me, you know, don't do this or do that. But I could see that criticism brought my attention to it. So there was that element of manipulation or unintended suggestion. And then I took that on board and saw benefit in actually listening. And, you know, that wasn't just there. That was having an attitude, in my case, of, oh, this music's easy. I've been playing fusion and funk for like 4 years. This stuff's, you know, I can play this, you know, because technically it wasn't hard. So I'm not sure to what extent I learned the stuff, but I learned it well enough to play it, right? Then we went into rehearsals and he was just like, this song's not sounding right. This one's not sounding right. And then some of them were sounding just perfectly great, and that was fine. And I noticed that there was this like quite a long list probably of songs he was looking at and then going to chop out. And there was a couple that I really liked playing or enjoyed to listen to. And he cut them out the set. And I took that personally. I felt a vibe. Like, is it me? Is that why he's cut it? I know maybe it isn't feeling right, you know, but everybody, you know, Steve played on the record and so did Paul, right? So, you know, I was probably the deciding factor in certain, and Helen, she was on that as well. So I took it home, you know, and I really took that sort of self-criticism on board, put the record on and listened to it with such fine-tuning. And I kind of understood that my touch was incorrect. Right. The notes were correct. But my touch was incorrect. The feel was okay, but the touch gave it a different sort of feeling, and that was the problem. Instead of playing the G octave, you know, I played, say, the G octave, I would play on the 5th fret of the G string, right? Hang on, where am I? C. So the 5th fret of the D string. I should have been playing it
on the A.
The neck.
On the A,
Yeah, because, and in fact, swooping up to that note would then give you the preface to the note. That would then give it another feeling, and as well as the thickness of the sound, playing notes on thinner strings gives you different quality, all of that stuff. So I realised that I wasn't actually respecting the general place that the bass line existed in the song. And it wasn't just notes, it was touch, and it was actually that was a massive, massive lesson for me. I think that understanding about the importance of nailing the feeling of the riff, not the feel, the feeling.
The feeling,
Yeah, that, which I call touch. That is so important because it's what I've used all through my session career by paying that much attention to, especially bass lines that I didn't write. Even bass lines I did write that I might have forgotten how I played it on the day, you know. Just going back and listening again and making sure I nailed the feeling by playing the notes in the correct part of the bar, bass neck and things like that. And the plucking technique, obviously the tone is affected by your settings and the amp, but the tone is influenced by your touch. And in fact, I just did a video for Fender on touch and tone. And then I did another one on taste, because I have this theory. Do you want to hear my theory?
Yes, please.
Okay. My general theory is that to be a really good bass player, and I think this applies to other instruments, but I'm not going there, being, you know, not a multi-instrumentalist. It's not in an order of priority. It can be taken in any order, but I started with touch and tone as one area to focus on, then taste, because taste obviously influences your choices, and that will influence what the right part is versus the wrong part or the wrong application. Then there's timing, which is obviously so major, But people with dodgy timing can kind of get away with that to some extent if they've got a great tone and touch, and the tastefulness of what they're playing is on point. But maybe the timing can be a little like that. So it's something you can pay attention to be in command of, but it's not like, you have to be metronomic. That's not what I do. And then the last one, of course, would be technique. So you've got touch tone, that's one. Then you've got taste, then timing, and then technique. And those are the focuses that I have, but that is the focus that I have when I'm trying to explain to students, if I do take any bass students, I'll be working on those areas because I don't show people licks. I don't show people licks of the day. I'll do theory, I'll do scales, I'll do all of that. But I really want to get their head working on how to make their sound unique, them, and what areas to concentrate on, how to dice it up,
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks. Well, I got that in some respect from Paul, because Paul really made me pay attention. Oh, and to actually finish that story. So I did this fine-tuning thing on my own with nobody telling me to do it, just realising that things weren't sitting right. I went back into rehearsal the next day and we played through that tune, funnily enough. And he went, he looked at me and he smiled, didn't say a word. And then Steve White said, "That was sounding really great, what did you do?" And I was like, yes. I just said, you know what I did? I listened and I respected what went before. And he went, well, and it made it in the set. And I was so proud of myself because nobody said anything, but I just took a bit of initiative and figured it out,
Yeah, that's wicked. Do you remember which tune it was?
Yikes. I used to know which tune it was, but now I don't think I do. I don't think it was but... No, I don't. I would like to actually try to recall what that was. I think I've written it down. I'm actually kind of writing a book at the moment.
Oh, right. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's long. I've done about 55,000 words and I'm just not even really on the music career yet.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. That's great. But the way you described it, with the five T's, that's really cool because that's something that you've picked up over experience, and obviously that Weller experience, and then you go, actually it's not the feel, it's the feeling. So how do I get that? So encompassing these, because a lot of people, they learn from watching people shredding or playing licks on YouTube, so they will learn a technique, but they're not paying attention to where that would fit in the terms of a song or interacting with other musicians, or all of the 5 T's. They're probably just thinking of one technique. The timing might be a little iffy because they can't quite play it. And they're not then thinking, what does this actually sound like? What's the feeling here?
Yes.
Because that's all music is. That's why it's an art form as opposed to a science, is the feeling that went into making it, whether it's Kraftwerk, Paul Weller, Charles Mingus, whoever, Tame Impala, whoever.
Yeah.
And that then translates, that's why we love it. Because it's got that human expression, even if it's through the technology of a computer or a bass guitar. Yeah,
exactly. And this is the thing. I actually have a belief, I might be biased, but I think being a good bass player is one of the hardest things to achieve. I actually think that our job, the simplicity of what we do, means that every little detail actually matters. Because we're playing less notes, where that, the harmonic connection between the rhythm of the drums and the harmony in the song. And we have to show great awareness of everybody else's parts so that we can not encroach on the vocals or, be too busy or not play enough support or offer some harmonic alternatives from the root area to enrich things, or to darken or lighten a mood. If you're playing in a major key and you change the root, you can change the feeling so it doesn't sound quite so twee. That's in the bass player's hands, that kind of responsibility. But to have somebody having to instruct you all the way down the line is not any position anybody wants to be in. You have to actually have some initiative and awareness to know how to try or what to try and what will work. And that stuff comes from experience, but it comes from listening. It comes from developing your ear, and that takes time, but it also takes actually doing it. This is the key thing I think that's missing from a lot of musicians in all instruments right now, is they don't listen enough. They're too busy playing to absorb. They're not taking in enough. They're too busy giving. And I think the giving is lovely. We love that you want to give us that solo, give us that lift and that drum fill. But what you don't understand is that people are absorbing what you do. You also need to absorb what you do so that you understand whether it's right or not.
Yeah.
Is it working? Maybe you only can do that once you've listened back. But as you develop more of an ear, you can actually make choices in advance of playing them to know whether something's going to work or not. And that takes a lot of time and patience. That's why I'm not actually interested in people sending me videos of 7-year-old slap monsters, or somebody playing a really great play along with a, I don't know, Jamiroquai riff or something. I'm not interested in that. Why would I want to see that? It's not music. It's just fun. It's exercise. It's showing off. It's dexterity, but it's not creativity, and it's not excellence. It's not developed musicianship, and I'm interested in developed musicianship of all forms in any genre.
Absolutely. That reminds me of a thing I did with Steve White many years ago. It was one of his drum things. And they had, before me and Steve played, they had the world's fastest drummer.
There's a world fastest bass player as well. You've got to see that one. That's hilarious.
It's what you said. It's like, it's fun, it's sport, it's athleticism. Yeah. But musically, it was horrible. Right, and then me and Steve did our thing where we played some grooves, and then Andy Newmark, who used to be in Sly and the Family Stone, sat there and he played as quiet and as slow as possible. Then I got up and played with him had a jam on some sort of Sly and the Family Stone stuff. Yeah. And the audience, everybody, you could see we've gone from, what is this, the world's fastest drummer? That's interesting. To then, now we've moved into music.
Yeah.
And then we've got some people not showing off, just listening.
Yes.
And playing together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not that, I mean, it takes experience to get there, obviously, but...
It does.
Yeah.
I think it takes a connection. I'm not talking about a spiritual thing, but it's almost there. It's like, what gives you, as a listener, because ultimately all musicians are consumers of music. We're fans of music. It's partly of why we play instruments, isn't it? Yeah. Some people might be there to be famous or something, but there's probably easier ways. Just eat loads of burgers for like a year and get fat and go on telly talking about how you lost your weight or something. I mean, there's other ways of becoming famous. So, the love that we have in music, if we tap into that as musicians and remember what moves us when we listen and apply that feeling, that connection with the music as a listener to ourselves as a performer, then we can give out and exude the love that we actually hold for music. It will be in our playing. Yes. And when an audience spots that, the genuine love of what you're actually performing, you capture them, you capture their attention. They love what you do. And it's never about how fast you played or how high you jumped off the drum riser or crowd surfed. There is a space for all of that. But first and foremost for me is, loving what I do and sharing that with people who are watching,
Absolutely. I mean, I was talking to a drummer called Jeff Dugmore, who...
I've done too.
Yeah.
Great.
So, God bless him. And he's hooked me up with Sterling Campbell, so I'm talking to Sterling on Thursday, which is like, that's not rubbish. But basically what you said is what Jeff was saying, because I've made loads of records with Jeff, and he always amazes me that he can play the simplest drum part like it is the most important thing in the world.
Yeah,
and he was saying it's love for the music and integrity for the music, which is basically different words, exactly what you just said. It's taking care and remembering what it is that you love about music, which you can then put into other people's music and your own, because you have your own band, Deep Mo, don't you?
Well, that was the previous name of the incarnation I had a few years back. I put out an album in 2012. Just as I broke up a long-term relationship, I was in no place to promote it at all. And I did do some things, I tried to keep it all going, but really what I should have done is, used my marketing skills and my contacts to push it harder. I didn't have the heart for it. I was going through a massive life change like you do when you break up from things, and so in the end it kind of fell by the wayside. I just used the material for trade shows and other performances I had to do, and I was singing then as well, which is I find very, very difficult. I'm not the strongest vocalist, so every time I stand in front of a mic I feel like I throw myself in, I'm not afraid. But boy, sometimes when I'm in there I'm like, I'm drowning.
Just let me play.
But yeah, no, I just recently started a new project. I call it Project PH, which is PH. It's a bit of a pun, a play on words, a little joke I have with my love of funk, but spelled with a PH instead of an F. But also, it's a reference to acid jazz. Because PH, acid, haha. And so I would like the idea that there would be some sort of acid funk scene as opposed to acid jazz scene. The acid jazz scene was the 90s. Acid funk is elements of blues, jazz, soul, fusion, just all thrown in, and it's funk because it's stank, it's nasty, that kind of thing. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why I've called it Project PH. Also, it's great for coming up with names for albums and tracks, you know. You can imagine how many puns I could use. And I am corny, so it's like, yeah, great, I'm going to have punnage going on.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so that's, I've got a really lovely lineup, and we've got a single. I'm just waiting for some files. During the lockdown, we're still working. The files should be turning up quite soon, and I'm going to be releasing a new single, I'm hoping in the next few weeks. Paul Stacey, a guitarist, I don't know if you know, he's mixing it for me.
Right.
For us. And I'm going to be releasing footage from a live show that we did last year that's not been released online yet. That's going to be using a new platform that's just about to come out.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be a new streaming subscription platform for live performances for musicians to put out their original material, as well as big names, and then people like me who don't really have a fan base as an artist, to just release material and keep it coming. Some of it will be like, lockdown video style, like the kind of Zoom stuff that's been everywhere. And some of it will be, once lockdown's eased a little bit, then we can just even have 3 or 4 people in a room performing for a crowd. We can do a gig. They're going to provide this service, which is fantastic. Once I have the actual final URL, all the rest of it, I'm happy to provide any details. They obviously want subscribers. And believe me, there's going to be great material. Plus my band's gig's going to be on there. So you'll see the thing. And I'm not singing on that. I've got a great singer called Paris Campbell who's doing the vocals. So I'm really pleased not to be singing, because that means I can focus on bass. And so, I'm excited about it. I really am. Yeah.
Well, I spent my entire career not singing until about 4 years ago, and I started working with Richard Ashcroft, and he was like, I turned up at rehearsal and there was a backing vocal mic set up in front of my amp. So, and that was it. Okay, well, I'll do it. So all I did was I did impressions of him on the mic. Thought, well, if I sound a little bit like him, it might fit in. And then I worked out that I can actually hit A minor.
Good.
The triad of A minor, I can actually pitch that. So everything else I can just go, it's around those 3 notes, I can probably get there. And if not sure, I will see if I can pick A, C or E to fit around them. Who knew? Again,
how do you like it with the independence?
I'm fine with it now. When I first started doing it, it's like, oh my God. Because guitarists, obviously, they can just go and sing. Their vocal rhythm can be the same as the guitar, but with bass it is generally absolutely, completely the opposite. It's like, here's England, there's Australia, and they're going the wrong way around. It's like, oh my God, But then, of course, it makes you then just, in a way, stop thinking about what your hands are doing. Which obviously, and then because you've got to then do the extra bit here. But you're still listening, and then it becomes more of just a flow or something. Oh God, I'm sounding like a total hippie now. But
no, it's very true. I think that there's 2 example. Somebody was watching my old bass teacher watched me do something. I was doing quite complex rhythms, and that is one of my own songs. And he said, I think what you're doing is it's almost like when you're driving. If you think about driving, how much attention you need and how many different things you're focusing on at one point. You've got both feet going, you've got the steering, you've got the assessments of the depth of things, closeness in advance of making a decision, all of that going on. Potentially having a conversation as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on. But he said that in his impression, the impression he had watching me, he said he feels like it's like that. You've got words, you've got rhythms, you've got melodies, then you've got rhythms on the bass, and then you've got the notes as well, and of course the rhythms too. So, unless I said that already, but anyway, he said he thinks that I'm probably doing a similar thing, like millisecond attention, just flitting from thing to thing, just to keep correcting course. And there'll be moments when when you're driving and you're not using anything, it's just accelerating and you're not staring left or right. You don't need to focus so closely on that. There'll be those moments when the bass line goes into a repetitive shape and you play it for a number of bars. At that point, that's just a muscle memory thing almost. And then you can focus on maybe a little bit of embellishment on the vocal, or just fine-tune the tuning a bit more at those points. And then when you've got a really complex kind of interplay going on with vocals and the playing, that's when your focus is going to be doing this kind of strange, very fast millisecond attention correction thing going on. And I was like, do you know what? I haven't analysed how I do it, but I think that's probably something like that, something to do with that. But the key thing is actually making sure that one or the other of the elements, the lyrics, the melody, the bass line, so three things really, that they're solid as hell. Like at least one of those has to actually be absolutely solid. I always find that absolutely knowing what the bass line is key to being free to be able to adjust my ear to the tuning in the vocal. Or, sometimes I had to jump harmony. When I was working with Sinead, I had to jump harmony all the time because she'd hear yours and then sing yours, and then you'd have to go to the next third because otherwise you'd be doing unison and stuff like that. So making sure the bass is dead solid is key, and then learning the vocals afterwards. So it's much easier that way around, I think. I wonder
what it'd be like if you got a neurologist to put, their little pads on your head while you're doing that, just to see, because obviously they'll say, oh well, that's this part of the cortex and that means this and that. Wouldn't it be fascinating to see like print out? And you go, well, at this point I was doing the repetitive riff, so look at the brain pattern here. Wow. Oh
gosh, anybody listening that fancies doing some sort of experiment, I'm a willing subject.
Fabulous. Well,
wear the cap. I'll do that. Well into that. At least I'm really curious, actually.
That'd be really interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah. Wow. Okay, so let's scoot. Well, okay, Weller's finished.
Yes.
Then obviously, I imagine because of Robbie Williams being a massive fan of all the Weller Britpop stuff going on, and that was why you got the call for the Robbie stuff.
That was Guy Chambers.
Right, okay.
And Guy Chambers was indirectly through Aztec Camera, because Jeremy Stacey was a drummer with Aztec Camera, and Guy Chambers was in that band. Now, was it the Lemon Trees or the Lemon Heads?
Lemon Trees.
Right, thank you. In a band together. So Guy Chambers came across me through Jeremy, I think. And Jeremy and I, from the Aztec Camera days, we became great friends. We're great friends now. And love him to bits, his drumming and as a person. And I think he recommended me to Guy. Guy said, Guy's hilarious. He said he wanted a female bass player. Again, there was that thing, and I was like, oh God, no, not that again. But then he said there isn't any other female bass players in the whole country that've got that kind of reputation as just being a great bass player, that level, the work you've done so far. But the fact that you're female was what I did want a female, but he said, I really wanted a female. Why you appealed to me on so many levels is because you're a mum, you're married, so you're not going to try to get Robbie to fall in love with you. Because he was so,
well, at least he was honest.
That's a euphemism, right?
Yeah.
So I was just like, oh great, no, I'm not going to try to get into a romantic entanglement with the star, but I think that's a problem around hot properties. They get hit on everywhere. And, but I'd worked with Guy with Kathy Dennis before that. Right, okay. Because Jeremy had recommended me. And that wasn't a female thing. That was just, I want a good bass player.
Thank God. And, wow.
Right, yay. And in fact, Paul didn't choose me because of me being a woman. That was one of the things I respected him for, because it was that I played on that show. He heard me backing, I forgot her name, the saxophone, Candy Dulfer.
Oh, yeah.
Cut the pieces, and it was a particularly good one for bass.
Wicked, yeah,
and
of course.
He was on that show, and he heard me playing that, and that's the basis that he invited me to join his band, which is, I loved that. So Guy had met me now to do this Kathy Dennis thing, and I just had my son, Tate, and I remember we did a TV, and I had my son in a little bassinet at the studio, and my brother was kind of keeping an eye on him while I did the recording of the TV show, you know. So becoming a mum, and I was quite young, 25, it didn't preclude my, being involved in music still. I had understanding people around it. At the time, Guy was just like, well, is it going to get in the way that you've just had a kid? I mean, I was still breastfeeding, you know, it was quite difficult that, because, you know, when you've got to feed, you've got to feed. And sometimes you might be on stage and it's like, oops. So you got to sort of like think ahead the whole time. There's other considerations that, bless you, yourself wouldn't have had to consider. No. So, he wasn't put off by the idea that I might be a little bit distracted by it, wondering if my kid was okay. And so I did that. And then when the Robbie job came up, which was a few years later, actually, so some time had passed, I was just about to go into some other line of work because it was quiet. Just had my second kid by this point now. This is 99. And times were getting a bit tough. I hadn't taken on so much work. And so I just thought I'll just do something else. So I sent off for an application form to join security night shift at Stansted Airport. Wow. This is after I'd done all this great work. Yeah. I just thought, look, I need to earn some money. There's no great work that I really want to do right now. I've got 2 kids. I need to work nights because, you know, that way, I can be there in the day. The best job I could do for that. A night shift job came up, an offer, and the application form turned up, and it was quite bulky. It was in a brown envelope. I hate brown envelopes. They're usually bills or bad news, you know. So this thing came out, and I just looked at it, and I was like, I'm not opening that for a day or two. I just left it. And I was like, oh, I've got to open it. And that day, Guy phoned up and said,